There were many years where I wanted to give up before I started Zartonk because of things I went through in my personal life, working at a young age.
Just focus on what you can control. If you can't control it, then just accept it.
Saw the lifestyle of all these attorneys and I said, this is horrible. There's been times in my life where I didn't think I could make it out.
Even if you do a lot of things for many people and they do nothing for you, these are seeds that you're planting. These people will sprout into something bigger, greater.
The market research was kind of our entire lives as Armenians living in the Armenian community.
What is that? It's a stupid, if you are depressed, they're like, okay, what do you mean go work?
I realized that, okay, I'm actually good at something. I'm actually gonna see where this goes. I thought it was a tragedy. I was
Yeah.
very sad. I was depressed. I didn't know, like, I distanced myself from my classmates, people I've known.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today, Zaven. It's a real honor to interview you.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I think you have a really good podcast.
Thank you. Good start for my podcast. So a little bit of a ad for me. Um, I want to start from the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey and just to understand a little bit. How old were you, first of all, when you started Zartonk Media?
I was 20, 21 when we
Mhm.
started Zartonk. I started Zartonk with uh, one of my best friends and became my co-founder, Van Dermagirtichan.
Mhm.
And the idea was conceived at the Starbucks on Chatsworth and Zelza in Granada Hills, Los Angeles,
Mhm.
California.
Was it like you took a napkin out and you drew things on a napkin? Was that the case as well?
Kind of like that.
Mhm.
It was more of I had this other sports page on Instagram that was just doing NBA highlights and content. And Vaughn and I were both active in the Armenian community. And we actually both had this idea of doing content for Armenians online. And then he's like, why don't we do this kind of stuff, news and then videos and interviews and stuff that's social media first? And I'm like, I literally want to do the same thing. And then just like
Amazing.
that, we started and came up with the name and all that soon after.
Okay, let's pause on that a little bit because I really want to talk a little more about how the idea was conceived and everything. But before that, did you always know that you want to be an entrepreneur? And what came before you actually started Zartok Media? What did you do before that? You
So
probably were at school. Let's put it that way. You were so young.
I really don't remember a point in time. There was actually one point in time in 2017 when I decided to go the course of the entrepreneur on a full-time basis. But for me, it was just the way my life was I started working from a very young age. So I was kind of thrown into this world, and I happened to be good at like marketing and sales and content and these things. And these were skills that uh, were developed at a very young age. So I was just kind of thrown into it. And yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. But so tell me about your education. I don't think I've asked you this question before. It's interesting. What is your background?
So, background for education, I went to the Armenian school
Hmm.
here in Los Angeles. There's five Armenian schools, five, six Armenian schools. So I went to Ferahian from preschool through high school.
Hmm.
And I was always around Armenians growing up. And then after that, I went to community college, and then I transferred to a four-year. And it was really my third year that I began to experiment. I wanted to be an attorney.
Hmm.
So I was studying political science, like many Armenians, and I decided to go full time into entrepreneurship after testing some stuff out and had some success in the
Hmm.
field.
Hmm. Okay. So, can you tell me a little bit about these entrepreneurial endeavors that happened before you started Zartong Media? Were there any specific ventures you started and any interesting projects you worked on?
It was in late 2017. I had just transferred to my to a four-year university from community college,
Mhm.
and I was working at a law firm, and I saw the lifestyle of all these attorneys and I said, this is horrible. It was a employment law firm and they were representing employers and I was doing file work and all that. And I would see the attorneys come in every single morning, leave late at night, court and all these things. And I told myself, this is not the lifestyle I want. I had been working around 8 years at that point. I started working early. So I told myself that I know I can do better. I know I can create something myself. And I trusted my own skills and myself. So I started the sports page on Instagram.
Mhm.
In around 6 months, I grew to around 70,000 followers. And I realized that, okay, I'm actually good at something. I'm
Mhm.
actually going to see where this goes. And off the back of that, I started this small creative agency, marketing agency, and started getting some clients, started leveraging the fact that I could grow an account and create content that will resonate with the given audience of that page.
Mhm.
And started doing that. Long story short, a year goes by, and that's when we had the conversation about starting Zartonk with Vaughn.
That's amazing. I think you've kind of tested yourself, your skills. You didn't throw yourself into something that you were not meant to do because a lot of people when they let's say they decide to be attorneys or lawyers, whatever, they just throw themselves into this because everyone says that you need to take this path. It's the safest path for you. But what you did is you kind of paused and regrouped a little bit before making that very important decision in your life.
People would tell me the exact same thing. And for me, it was I actually made us like a deal with my parents because I paused school in my third year and I went to my parents and I'm like, look, I'm doing these things. It's going good. I want to focus more on this. Give me a year. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to school. And they said, no problem. And they had seen my work ethic from a young age. So that was I've always been I've always tried to be very pragmatic and very reasonable when it comes to talking to people and making sure they're happy, making sure I'm happy, and finding that middle ground.
Let's come back to the story where you decided to start Zartonk Media. I want to understand, did you identify a gap in the market? Did you start doing some kind of market research, or was it, this is the idea, let's create something small, let's test it out and then see what happens? How did this start?
The market research was kind of our entire lives as Armenians living in the Armenian community. So it was all the interactions we had, it was all the conversations we would see, it was just being raised in going to an Armenian school, being active in these organizations. So that was the market research. Living in an Armenian household with your grandma and your mom and your dad and seeing the dynamic and like the core of it was to try to fix the information system
Yeah.
that we have as Armenians, which is
Mhm.
based more it tends to be based more on rumors than facts or like not facts and facts. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So I would see all that and I would see the way we would talk about things and it's I love my family. I love my grandmother. I love my grandfather, my parents, and all that. I wouldn't change them for anyone else. But why is it that whenever you're growing up and your grandmother and all her friends are on the phone with all their friends, why is it that the news that tends to be prioritized is the bad news? This person passed away. This person did this. This person did that, and it's very rarely that you'll hear that like this person started this business or was successful or whatnot. So I would see the information issue there. And then I would also see it when I was growing up and through middle school, and we would start to learn about Armenian politics or Armenia.
Mhm.
And then whether it was about certain leaders or certain people, people either loved them or hated them. And I feel like at that point, I didn't really understand why. People
Mhm.
would just do it because their grandfathers didn't like that person, because they were raised under that time in Armenia or whatnot. And the kids would just repeat the same thing and label them as oligarch, corrupt, etc., etc. I'm not saying they weren't, but like
Yeah.
no one did their own research to figure out why. It was just more of a word they used to on that thing, and they would just move on. So I'm like, okay, these things aren't okay. If we want to
Mhm.
build something, we have to just go more to the foundations.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think you're targeting an entire generation of people who are using social media for getting to know what's happening around the world, and considering that we didn't really have social media first kind of news before Zartonk Media, did we, for Armenians,
I don't think
especially for diaspora?
there could have been a few pages out there, but there was nothing substantial. And we
Mhm.
kind of saw that, and we were 2021 at that point, and we were
Yeah.
active in the Haitad and these Armenian organizations. And I realized that there's a huge gap, that there's so many people that are not engaged. And I realized that social media is going to keep growing, and it's going to be a thing forever. It might evolve, but it's going to be a thing. And we started it because we wanted to just provide value and information to our community and
Mhm.
to build bridges between the homeland and the diaspora and vice
Yeah.
versa.
Yeah. And I would assume that you're kind of like the minimum viable product that you built was exactly the social media page. Did you start with just the social media page and then you created the website and everything, or how was that?
For the first 2 years, it was Instagram for the first year.
Hmm.
Twitter, now X, was
Hmm.
after that, but it was literally just graphics we would make on Canva and then on Photoshop, and it was yeah, it was a very simple operation early on.
Yeah. And it was just the two of you working on it at
It
first,
was
or did
it
you
was
hire someone?
it was the two of us in 2018, 2019, 2020. It was in 2021 that we made our first hire in Armenia.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How were this initial first the few years? Like, when did you see that? First of all, when did you realize that this is actually working? When did you get the proof of concept, so to speak, for entrepreneurs?
So for Zartonk, we actually, when we started it, we didn't really tell anyone that we were doing it. We just started the page, created the about us and our mission and all that stuff, and we just started publishing content, and we were
Hmm.
publishing four, five, six things a day. And everyone that would follow us, we would DM them saying thank you for following Zartonk Media. Like so we were doing all of that stuff, and then it was 6, 7 months in, we were at what 4 or 5 thousand followers. And there was one day we were hanging out with our like high school friends, and they're like, "Who's this? Who's this account?" Like they post Armenian stuff, this, that, and we said, "Oh, we have no idea who they are," because we were like, again, we were younger, and there's like these stigmas in our community and these things. So we told ourselves, look, if it doesn't work out, we'll just close shop and move on, and no one needs to know.
Yeah.
And we've kind of grown out of that now, and we're no longer afraid of like those stigmas or those things that most people tend to think about more when they're younger. So yeah, that was that.
Yeah. So it was the first year you realized like you have kind of a proof of concept, like after a year, because there were.
It was
Mhm.
6, 7 months in, and the
Nice.
day that we really realized that okay, we're onto something was it was, I believe, October 2019. The House of Representatives passed a standalone resolution to recognize the Armenian genocide. So
Mhm.
we knew about this maybe a week before, and we had the idea while we were playing backgammon, Vaughn and I. I'm like, okay, let's make two posts. One for if it passed, one for if it didn't, with the breaking news and the photo of the house and all that. And we'll watch the live vote. And once it passes the yes threshold, we'll just publish it because it passed until the vote closes. We made a version that if it didn't pass, luckily we didn't have to use that. So we're
Mhm.
watching the live vote on C-SPAN or something,
Mhm.
and it passes. It had like a few abstentions. I think it was like 300. It was 300 votes for. So we publish within like 10 minutes. We have all these celebrities reposting it. We have people sharing it. We grew by like 5, 6,000 followers in a day. And we're like, okay, we're onto something. And at that point, in October, we had started to tell a few people that we were doing Zartonk, and the reactions were all positive. People had a bunch of questions: how we're making this, how we're doing that, how we came up with the idea. And so a month after that, the Senate did the same thing. They passed another standalone resolution. And these efforts were all spearheaded by our grassroots activism organizations like the ANCA and the Armenian Assembly. We did the same thing there. It passed. We published, and our account grew by 4 or 5,000 more followers. And that took us to around 15,000 at the end of our first year. And it was really at
Mhm.
the start of 2020 that, okay, we realized that we were onto something, that this was working. And we began to think more long term about our plans and our content and all that.
Mhm. That's pretty cool. So you had a few moments when you actually knew that you're onto something, you're doing the right thing. But were there any times or periods where you were like, I think I need to give up. This is not working. Did you ever have that thought in mind?
No,
Amazing.
I don't think at any point. I think when we started Zartonk, it was we were visiting a friend in Chicago. Vaughn and I were visiting one of our friends in Chicago, and we were at there's like this Armenian park in downtown Chicago. The name is skipping me right now, but so like they have these Yerevan Chicago benches, just like in Yerevan, like the branded
Oh,
benches they
nice.
have. So we made our first post from there.
Wow.
And then whenever we published that, we like I told Vaughn that like we're gonna make this into the biggest media company ever, and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. And he's like, okay, let's just start. We just made our first post, gamats gamats. And I said, okay. And I've always been that very ambitious, very driven person that will see the vision and run after it. And Vaughn was more of the balance to me to be like, okay, that's great. Let's let's go like month to month, quarter to quarter, have goals, and go like that.
No, I think that's a really good partnership. So you have like someone who is very ambitious, that's really high goals, and then someone who grounds you. So it creates this kind of a balance of practicality and real aspirations. I think that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I think one thing that a takeaway that I can do from this is entrepreneurs really need to have this incredible self-belief because when you are starting something, well, there are high chances that it's not going to work out. But if you doubt yourself every second step that you take, it's just not going to work. You're going to fail because it takes incredible belief, self-belief, but at the same time, flexibility and being like open-minded, and which I think between you two, you had a good combination of that. Did you fight a lot? I mean, spend a lot
No,
of time with one another, probably.
I went to Ferahan from preschool. Vaughn joined in the seventh grade. And we've been like very close friends like since then. And we both had the same goal. We both had the same mission. We both wanted to get to the same place. So we've never really had an argument about any of that. I was more of the marketing person, of the entrepreneur, and he was more of the operator and the organized person. So we really complement each other then and now. And we like there's no horror stories here about any of that stuff that like the things you see on TV. But I'm very blessed that to have that.
Yeah, that's important. How were you guys funded initially? Did you just self-fund yourselves, or did you find some sponsors, some people who would support you?
We were entirely self-funded. Our biggest expense in the first year, in the first 2 years, was our Canva and Adobe Suite subscription uh, to create content, edit videos, etc., etc. That was really it. And it was in 2020 was COVID, so it was a year in, a year and a few months in. It was the lockdown, so we were home. So we
Mhm.
wouldn't really do anything. So we were just working all day, and
Mhm.
it was kind of what we poured our everything into during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think going all in is super important because a lot of the times when we start something, we're like, I'm just gonna test it out and think about it. But just this mentality of I'm gonna go all in. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like you're kind of betting on yourself. I think it's important for entrepreneurs to understand that. Um, I think you started when you were 21, which is like super cool. I think very interesting. But did you ever have like an imposter syndrome or like, when you're trying to say, oh, this is what I'm doing, and you're explaining your business idea and you're explaining what you've done so far before having the results? Anyone would probably have imposter syndrome, but when you're younger, it probably is 10 times more than what an average entrepreneur has. Is that the case for you?
Would I say I had imposter syndrome? I don't think so. I
Mhm.
think everyone has moments when it comes to their mental health when they have their ups and their lows. And when they're close to their lows, and I've had that, you start to doubt yourself here and there, but it's really important to snap out of it and to refocus on the mission. And for me, I have I have a great family. I have great friends that I've known my entire life. And anytime I've ever had to talk about something, figure something out, I would just go and talk to them,
Mhm.
and I would be good. And I always had that support system, which is the one of the things I'm most grateful for in my life is
Mhm.
that. So luckily, no, but given that I was working at for around 8 years at the point to the point that I started Zartonk with Vaughn, all those doubts and all those things that I had, I faced in my teenage years when I was very, very young. So I kind of got through that earlier.
Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. I faced imposter syndrome when I started my first business, and it was like people were asking me, and I had experience before that. Like I was 24 when I started my first business, and it was challenging because I would say, oh, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm trying to do, and people would doubt me, especially I was in Yerevan at that time. And so I'm asking that question coming from a personal experience of someone said, well, yeah, this is what I'm doing, like I'm not really very confident in that.
So I'll say this. So it's very different to doubt yourself, and it's very
Mm,
different for people to doubt you. People have doubted me and discounted me for a very long time, up
mm,
until up until things picked up and started to like to them it showed that okay, these guys know what they're doing. But I never let that get to me. I when we started Zartunk in the like it was towards the end of the first year, in the second year during the
mhm,
war, after the war, people wanted to know who we were, that we started this page, and it was at the start of the war. So we were at around 11,000, 15,000 followers, I believe, at the start of 2020.
mhm.
And over the next few months, we grew to 40. And it was really in April 2020, there was skirmishes and a lot of anti-Armenian attacks and sentiments that were growing in Europe and Russia that were driven by Azerbaijan
Yeah.
and Turkey. So that took us to 40,000. And then by the time the war um, uh, was was done, we were just above 100. And at that point, we were exposed to the entire community. Everyone knew who you were, and people wanted to know who was funding us, who was behind us,
Yeah.
and some people thought we were on one side or the other, etc. And we've always been independent. We've always been independently funded, first through by ourselves, and then through finding sponsors, which were Armenian American business owners, small business owners, who became our sponsors and our advertisers.
I hear a lot Zartonk Media is a disruptive platform. What makes it disruptive?
Being the first media platform to be social media first
Mhm.
kind of changed the game from what we noticed, as there was no one doing it. You had all these outlets that had been around for 20 years, 30 years, some that had just been out for 10 years, that were in Armenia, that were independent or NGO funded, that just didn't prioritize social media. They didn't and they didn't prioritize social media for many years after we launched, because they thought that it was either too late to join, when it never is. It's always the right time. The best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. The second best time is now. Uh, and people thought it was too late, and they just didn't invest. It was bad strategy. So it was easier for us because no one else was waking up, and we were publishing. They would see our likes, they would see everything, and they just like these organizations had money. They could have hired a social media person. They could have hired a video person in the first 6 months or first year of Zartonk being around, and they would have
Yeah.
grown. They would have grown, but they didn't, and that's not my problem.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you saw the opportunity and you believed in the idea and kind of was your North Star and you followed it. I think that's what entrepreneurship is generally about. That
Yeah.
you see something, you see an idea and you believe in it, and that just everything else just falls apart and you move towards it. But I think entrepreneurship is often such a roller coaster. You have such highs and such lows. And something that, especially in Armenian community, people don't like talking about is mental health. And I always try to bring up this conversation with entrepreneurs because mental health and entrepreneurship is very much related, I mean, linked. So when you start this entrepreneurial journey, there are one sort of challenges, but when you hit a certain point, when you already blew up or you're successful, to a certain extent, another sort of challenges come up, and usually it kind of shakes you to your core. How has your inner state changed after you became an entrepreneur and after the Zartonk Media took off?
I think mental health is something that needs to be talked about a lot more, both men, for both women, for entrepreneurs, for non-entrepreneurs. Like most people I meet, struggle with it, and you can tell, especially whenever you've been through the works. Especially when like there's been times in my life where I've been depressed. There's been times in my life where I didn't think I could make it out. And this is really just things I've been through as a person, not really a part of the entrepreneurial journey. Family, things like that. For me, like it was just having good friends and good people around you and just getting through it. And
Mhm.
we wanted to elevate Armenian excellence, tell stories like it was after the war. We're now in 2021, midway through 2021, and we had our videographer in Armenia, and we started to do interviews, these 1 minute, really cool social media first interviews with whether it was with creators, with entrepreneurs, with people that were doing really cool things, whether it was the founder of Azat Mart, the clothing brand.
Yeah.
Uh, it's this Armenian guy and his co-founder in London, and they were in Armenia, and we interviewed them, and the video blew up. And we realized, okay, there's something here. We did interviews with certain restaurants and cafes in Yerevan that were very popular, and we realized that okay, people want to see these things. So we just kept on doing more and more of them, and just telling stories. So we kind of transitioned from only being news to content creation and creating our own content through interviews and video around that time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's partly why I started this podcast as well. I wanted to shed light on people like you who are actually doing stuff in the community, not just in the community. They're just creative, they're working hard, and they're doing whatever they do best. And I think that's beautiful. And we need more stories like that to be out there versus what we hear on social media, which is a bear costume or all of that type of shit. I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were saying something.
I wanted to address something you said about just turning bad stuff into good stuff.
Hmm.
I think it's extremely important to turn all of that and to only focus on what you can control in life, which is one way of looking at that is what goes into your mouth and what comes out of your mouth. It's what you say, and it's what you eat, what you drink, what you choose to smoke, etc., etc. And I think if everyone just focuses on that, we would be in a better place, and
Hmm.
and to stop thinking about things that are out of their control. And that applies in your personal life as an entrepreneur, as an Armenian, etc. Let's just do what we can do, what we can control, and we'll be in a better place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more that like, and with that comes learning new skills, keeping yourself up to date, etc., etc.
That's a very stoic approach. I think that's one of the things that Marcus Aurelius mentioned in his books, the meditations. Like, well, generally his stoicism. I say, like, just focus on what you can control. If you can't control it, then just accept it. That's the
Yeah.
only thing that you can do.
That was the rabbit hole I fell into during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was reading those things.
Yeah, I think that's a very good thing to consume, especially in times when you really can't do anything. The war, the pandemic, there's not much you can do. You can contribute with certain things, but there's just things in the world that are happening and you need to accept them. And acceptance is probably the first stage of change. Before changing anything, first accepting things as they are without trying to put a spin on it, whatever you're trying to do. How do you reach out to mentors? I'm assuming like a lot of young entrepreneurs or people who are starting out, they just don't know, like, should I just message this person? Should I just ask them, would they be my mentor? What is your strategy in seeking out
Oh,
mentorships?
for us, I'm someone that's always prioritized networking and meeting people,
Hmm.
and seeing how I can provide value to them. It was what I was doing when I had my marketing agency right before the pandemic. I was always value first, asking questions. I always wanted to learn. It was 2 weeks ago. I was having coffee with my grandmother, who I
Mhm.
love very much.
Armenian coffee?
Armenian coffee. Yep,
Yeah, nice.
who I live with and who I love very much.
Mm,
And she started to tell stories about how I was when I was younger and this and that. And she's like, you would always ask questions. You would always say inchu, like for anything about like why water is a certain way, why things are a certain way. You would always ask why. And that's when I like you have to kind of be told that when you're older, and then things kind of make sense on why you are the way you are now. Whenever your
mm,
grandmother, your mom would tell you how you were naturally like were as a person when you were very young. So that's when a lot of things started clicking. It was 2 weeks ago. I'm like, okay, I've always been like this. Interesting. I've always been someone that wants to learn more, and that's kind of one thing led to another, and then we started Zartonk. But when it comes to mentors and finding them, going back to asking questions and learning and providing value, we kind of just met certain people and we got along with them and we asked questions. And whenever we met someone that was very successful, we asked for their advice and their experience and how we can learn from them. And I think it's a mistake that most people make is whenever they meet a successful businessman, they want to ask them for money or for a
mm,
job or for something instead of asking what I can do for you. We would just ask questions like, okay, we're having this problem and this problem. How do you think we should solve it? And they're like, read this book, try this, etc., etc. So it was just right place, right time, knowing what to say, being ready for that, and yeah.
yeah. I think that's I've had like back in Armenia I had a training center where I developed the training on networking skills, and that's exactly what I was teaching. Like approach every person you meet with the mentality, what can I do for you versus what can you do for me? Because it's always like this reciprocity. Like even if you do a lot of things for many people and they do nothing for you, these are seeds that you're planting. This people will sprout into something bigger, greater, and then at some point maybe you will again meet, and this will be mutually beneficial. So I think that's a very good shift for entrepreneurs to not approach everyone with, can they give me funding? Can I get something from this person, from that person? But just how can I make sure that this is a balanced relationship and it's not just about taking and taking, but also giving, which is a super important point. So you mentioned that you had mentors some from early on, and then you always seeked mentorship, and that you started working quite early. Can you talk a little bit about those years going back to your childhood and teenage years?
I was growing up, I was the oldest son, oldest grandson. And that comes with a certain level of expectation and certain level of attention you get as a kid,
Yeah.
especially when you live and you grow up with your grandparents.
How many
Uh,
children are in the family?
I have a younger brother who's 8 years younger than me,
Oh, wow.
and but I grew up with my cousins who are a year to 2 years younger than me. Uh,
Mhm.
my Then that entire time. So it was so that was my life really, and then it was during the recession in 2007, 2008. Like many other families, it was very tough for us. And I had to go to work at 11 full time while I was going to Armenian school, and I was the only one working at that age, or really in middle school or high school, or one of the only ones at that time, and I'm very very grateful. My grandfather um, um, was helping with pay the tuition at the Armenian private school I was going to, and that's really what helped keep me in there. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have started Zartonk. I wouldn't know if I would have been engaged with the community. I don't know where my life would be.
Mm.
So I'm very grateful for my family and the people around me. And it was around that time so we had family friends in Fresno that were not Armenian who had an organic fruit farm. And they would go to farmers markets, whether it was Wednesdays in Northridge or Tuesdays in Studio City, Sundays in Long Beach, et cetera, et cetera. And I would go with my family and we would set up tents and we would set up tables and we would sell fruit and we would cut samples and put it for people to come. So from 11, 12, 13, that was my life. That was my life multiple times a week. I would go to school tired. I would have blueberry stains under my fingers because I would have to clean the blueberries um, at um, at the market, and I was very happy, very sad. It was a whole roller coaster. I didn't understand anything. I wasn't really processing anything. I was just going through it. And people are talking about college, about their life and their dreams, and I really wasn't thinking about any of that because I'm thinking about tomorrow I have to go to work.
Mm.
And working with family has its ups and it has its downs. If you've seen any show, whether it's or movie about whether it's Italians or Greeks or Armenians or whatnot, you you love each other, you argue with each other, you work with each other, and everything in between.
Yeah.
It was a lot of that early on, but luckily I was exposed to, and I learned skills in sales and marketing and communication, um, um, and um, and it was different because I learned all those things through experience instead of in school. So I would learn it, and I knew how to, like, it was actual practical skills that I learned in the workplace,
Mm.
which are more effective compared to learning them in school, in my opinion, especially those skills. So started doing that, and then I was 13. My family bought a small, fast casual Greek restaurant. And I started working from there when I was like 13 and a half, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I would leave school every day at 3:30, take the bus, go to work. Luckily, it was 10 minutes away. Work from 4 to 10 p.m. every single day, all through the last year of middle school, all through high school. And those were years that your classmates go to, it's like the pool parties, the hangouts, the all of that, and I missed almost all of that.
Mhm.
And I felt alone at school because I was very different. I would compare myself to the people around me because as a kid, you're not processing things like, okay, I live in America. I have clothes, I have a house, I have all those
Yeah.
things. And there were times where we had to move. We had to move in with my grandparents during the recession because it was one time, and luckily it was only one time or a few times where we were in the thick of it, and I didn't really understand anything. I just knew that my life had changed, and we had made sandwiches at home. It was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, and we had only a certain amount of bread and tomatoes and ham, and I had one sandwich. And then I asked for a second sandwich, and my mom made it. And I realized that we were out of food, and my mom didn't eat. And I didn't know how to process any of that at that age. And it was very tough. But again, people have been through worse. And we got out of it. And luckily, we lived with my grandparents, and they would provide all that for us for those few years. So there have been times that I didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like. Again, it's nothing compared to what people experience. I still had all that. I still had a family. I still had all that, and I'm very grateful for that. But it was tough, but we got through it, and I'm very grateful for everything, and I wouldn't change anything, and it makes you the person you are today.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful story. I think that one when we're going through different situations, it's really difficult to compare and say, well, in this situation, you should be grateful because at least you have this, at least you have that. First of all, you were a kid, and I don't think that's how kids perceive the world. We don't really know what's out there. You don't have that awareness. And then also we process feelings and emotions differently. Sometimes for one person, one small tiny thing can be like a tragedy, and for another person it can be nothing. So people are different, so just comparing one situation with another is just, yeah, I don't think that's healthy at all. But uh,
Don't get me wrong.
is
I thought it was a tragedy. I was
yeah.
very sad. I was depressed. I didn't know, like, I distanced myself from my classmates, people I've known since preschool, because I
Yeah.
didn't know how to talk about, okay, I'm working, I'm doing this. And like in hindsight, everyone was supportive. I just didn't, like, I would just shut it down because I thought I was going to be criticized or I was going to be singled out or whatnot. And I kind of dug my own hole.
Yeah.
Again, you're a kid, you don't know how to process these emotions. So I dug my own hole of, okay, I'm lonely, I'm sad, I'm this, I'm that, instead of looking up and saying, okay, these people are around me. Let me make the best of things. And it was a few years after that, whenever I was working at the restaurant, I realized, okay, and it was in my senior year of high school. My dad had a heart attack, almost passed away, made it. That was tough. But again, I want to take a moment to talk about the fact that Armenian dads and Armenian men and just Armenians need to prioritize their health more.
Oh my
If you have
God,
a heart,
yes.
if you have a heart attack, and it's it's tragic no matter how it happens, when it happens. But when you're eating very unhealthily, that and you're smoking 2 packs a day
Mhm.
and you're eating halva with a spoon every night, and you have a heart attack, and people say, "Oh, how?" It's like, no, that's how. It's
Yeah.
like, let's stop with this bullshit. I'm sorry. You get my point. We have to
No,
just
for sure.
more accountability.
I think that you're hitting a very good point within the Armenian community. Like the parents think that their children are the priority, and they put themselves like they deprioritize their health, their mental health. Well, mental health in Armenian community doesn't exist. Like what is that? That being child, it's a stupid. If you are depressed, they're like, okay, what do you mean go work? Like that doesn't exist. But just prioritizing health and just mitigating the possible risks, right? Because we don't do that. We think that, yeah, well, I'm gonna have at least one happiness in my life today is just, halva, eating something sweet, something. But then this accumulates within decades, and then at some point something happens. And it's like, he was so young. Like, why did this happen to him? You're absolutely right. Another thing I wanted to ask you was, as you were going through all of these challenges when you were a teenager, I think have you developed this hunger for success, hunger for creating something value, hunger for making sure that you can make money and you can create opportunities for your family? Was that where the hunger came from, or not so much?
Yeah. It's one of the things that drives me is when you come from not much, you want to have much, and you want to work hard, and you want to do everything you can, and to surround yourself with the best people and and to have the best resources to accomplish those things. I have very big plans. I have very big dreams, even now, for myself, for my family, for my future family, for our homeland, for our community here, is to find these things that we accept, which are wrong, and to find ways of fixing those with other people, because we can't do anything ourselves,
Yeah.
and to never sacrifice truth for convenience ever, in life, in business, in anything. And to always speak truth and to always seek justice. And it's yeah, these are very nice words that I'm using, and but this is how I live my life.
I think all of those things that you're saying, the values that you've developed and the ideology that you live by, these are things that come with self-awareness. And self-awareness usually is something that comes out of pain, usually. And that's so the early years that you described, it was the hardship that you described, that's there for a reason. And I don't understand, I'm not, obviously, like, I'm not a spiritual guru or anything, but I do read a lot of literature like philosophy, psychology, some spiritual readings, and it always talks about we do not, when you're going through a tough or challenging time, you don't know why it's there. And it's always for a reason, for you to develop certain skill set, for you to develop certain character that's going to propel you for success in the future, or it's going to push you to become something that you are meant to become. And some people see that as an opportunity. Other people see that as, as a challenge. So this is a challenge for me. You obviously took this as, okay, I'm going through this challenge. It's hard, but I'm going to do my best. And at some point, you've developed the character out of it, and the values and the mindset that you've developed out of it helped you to become who you are today versus you could have this could have really broken you, and you could have just ended up not being able to push through and create whatever you were able to create today.
You're right. And there were many years where I wanted to give up before I started Zartonk, because of things I went through in my personal life, working at a young age, family dynamics, But the things that got me through is my faith, which I struggle with every single day. And my faith in God and the people I surround myself with. And I've always been an optimist, like just my entire life. I always
Mhm.
try to see the bright side, the good sides of people. I know that everyone is human. I know everyone does wrong things, and everyone deep down wants to be better, but at times they lose focus of that. And that's why in the midst of things being going very, very bad, I would always have a glimmer of hope inside of me that I've never really lost. And again, whether it was during the war in 2020 when we were working 40 like 22 out of every 24 hours of the day and taking naps throughout the day so we can report on the war. And we would see all these horrific videos and all that stuff. Somehow, due to the way we were and our optimism and our faith, we didn't really let it get to us. And that's something that most people can't say. And at times it was tough when we would see those things, but we just got through it and tried to focus on the things that we could control instead of the things that we couldn't, and to push and push and push. And you always get out of it if you I can't even say that. I can't even say that you always will get out of it if you really want to, because there's many people that don't. But
Yeah.
you have to try to set up yourself for success.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, what's next for Zartonk Media?
So we're currently ending 2024 and we're entering 2025, and it's more content, more interviews, more stories, elevating Armenian excellence. Whether it's business owners, nonprofit organizations, highlighting good work that Armenians do, and to focus more on the business end, focus more on the sponsor side of the business, to grow that, so we can hire more people, so we can do more of the elevating Armenian excellence part. But it's really like we have a two new projects we're launching in January, February. One is centered around Armenian businesses and providing value to our community around that, and to connect us in a way that I think we have not been connected before. And the
Mhm.
other one is through a consulting project company that will turn all the knowledge and experience we have in media and modern Armenian media and provide that to our organizations, whether they're in the diaspora or they're in Armenia, to elevate that. Our goal is to elevate the entire Armenian media landscape,
Mhm.
uh, not just for Zartonk, but for organizations that we're very close with that do very, very good work, whether it's the whether it's like the school I went to or the Armenian schools here, and elevating them, all the way to elevating Armenia's tech scene and working with UATE in Armenia, all the way to working with the Armenian State Symphony Orchestra, who like they're amazing, and spreading Armenian music and culture throughout the diaspora and throughout the world. Or the Armenian Educational Foundation AEF, which does amazing work, or reforesting nonprofits in Armenia who plant hundreds of thousands of trees a year and are trying to create a more sustainable future. And there's no better way of investing in your homeland than to think 50, 100 years in the future. And there's no better way of there's there's many ways, but there's one of the better ways of showing your adversaries that you care about your future is by taking care of your nature and your homeland,
Mhm.
and planting trees and thinking that way. So our goal is to elevate all that and to work with more people. So if you are an organization or a nonprofit, we get in touch with us and we'll see what we can do to elevate your presence. But it's important to not only succeed ourselves, but they say a rising tide.
Yeah, lifts all the ships.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
Yeah,
our goal. Our goal is to change everything for the better, to what we can control, and to leave Armenia and Armenians in a better place than we found it, like as people, and to think about Armenia every morning, every night, and to do what we can in our community here and spread more awareness.
I love that. Thank you. I'm going to finish by just one last question, which is if you could give one advice to yourself as you were starting out and starting the Zartonk Media, what would that advice be?
Never thought about this. This is a very good question. Um,
Just one thing you could say. It doesn't have to be advice. Just what is
keep
it that you know now that you didn't know when you were starting out?
keep going, don't give up. Keep trying more things. Stop thinking that you know everything. Ask more questions, learn more, um, position yourself to succeed more, if that makes sense. And yeah, that's yeah, and to keep like and as an entrepreneur to try more things early on to figure out what you want to do based on trying things out and realizing what you don't like and what you like and what you're good at. Because it's one thing to follow your talent,
Yeah.
it's one thing to follow like your talents and your skills, and then what you like and all like most of the time those things aren't the same of what you're naturally good at as a person
Mhm.
versus what you want to do or whatnot. The one thing I want to add is um, if like whether you like them or you don't like them, I'm talking about America, but I'm trying to draw an example. Take Elon Musk.
Mhm.
This guy is running multiple billion-dollar companies. He's
Yeah.
traveling all over the world. He is tweeting multiple times a day. He is like streaming and like gaming with like people that are like half his age, and he's still on top of his game. Like if again, I'm not an Elon Musk. He's one of the smartest people that is alive on Earth. But if he can send rockets into space and then like catch them with chopsticks, like we can learn the things that we say we can't do, whether it's like getting better at social media or developing a skill or two. Like we have to really stop with the excuses and stop with all of that, and to just want to get better. Like there are books out there are videos out there we can watch. The way we learn design and social media is all through like reading books and through experience and through YouTube. So
Yeah.
a lot of the times that when people say they can't do something, it's just an excuse and they actually can. And if you really care about something, you'll find a way of making it sustainable. You'll it if you can't equip those skills, then you bring people in who do have those skills and you surround yourself with the with the right people and you set yourself up for success.
That actually motivated me to continue working today. Even though it's Saturday, I'm just gonna push through and work as much as I can because I think that one of the best things we can do for ourselves is just to tap into our potential to the fullest. And that's the most important thing for all of us. As Armenians, non-Armenians, doesn't matter. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing your time and personal stories and everything. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy.